So the reason we're here today is that Go Beyond Profit did a survey of Georgians, employed Georgians, and in 2020 we found that the vast majority told us their mental health was pretty good. But then in 2022, 1 in 3 Georgians told us that they are going to leave their job as a result of their mental health. That was a red flag for us. And so when we think about how do we help those who are founders, CEOs, presidents, actually consider what is the state of mental health in their workforce today, and do they know?
So Megan, I want to give people a background of how I know what the mental health landscape is. In 2020, I had already been speaking on stress and burnout and mental health in the workplace. And this topic was, expanding and coming into companies' consciousness. And we would take stress tests of the audience and collect data to give to the audience so they would know what to do in our protocol, but also have data for companies. And what we actually found is the number you found at Go Beyond Profit is actually low. Our data showed that 82% of people were suffering symptoms of stress or burnout that was negatively impacting their cognition, meaning your memory or your sleep, your mental health, your mood, and physical health, all three. This mirrors the data that was released in 2022 from the American Psychological Association, also showing that 78% of employees have experienced at least one symptom of burnout related to their jobs. And this data is also consistent with what the Surgeon General has been following, of over 80% of individuals having a mental health crisis, symptoms, and burnout in the workplace that help them to create their mental health framework for the workplace. So that was just a lot of data I fed you. I want to make it clear, more than 3/4 of your employees, everyone from the C-suite down to your last hire, is not doing well mentally. And that one last issue at work that could seem so minuscule will be the tipping point for them not only to quit their job, maybe quit the industry and have a breakdown or a crisis.
Some might say that a conversation on mental wellness is a conversation best had at home. Why should we have it about the workplace?
Megan, for any company of today, in order to survive, the conversation of both mental wellness and mental health must be addressed. It's our jobs that are making us ill. My story is no longer unique. It's not about the companies of the future. It is about companies of today must build a culture of wellness, not only to survive, but to thrive.
For many CEOs and their CFO sitting next to them, they're thinking about the cost of implementing a new program. Isn't there a cost to doing nothing?
How can you afford not to take action? We're in a mental health crisis, Megan, and it's our jobs that are making us sick. And most people are not quietly quitting, they're quitting live on social media. So not only is that bad PR for your company, but really the data I ask every leader to get comfortable with, what is the cost of replacing and losing your frontline worker? What is the cost of losing and rehiring someone at a mid-manager level? What is the cost of losing and replacing someone in a senior leadership position? Those cost estimates are out there. And then look, in the last 6 months, how many people have you lost in the year? And when you look at it that way, what is the cost of not taking action? And at the end, your mission at Go Beyond Profit. We want to create companies that are doing good in the world. And that starts by doing good for our people. And if we show our people, I care about my mental health and I care about your mental health, we're not only spreading that good in the world, but we're reducing per employee health insurance costs. We're reducing the burden on a very overburdened, broken healthcare system and mental health care system in America. And then the data is right there. You're improving employee engagement, the culture, and the productivity. How can you afford not to act?
People seem to have gotten comfortable using words like, well, I'm stressed, well, I'm burnt out. But then when you move into, do you have a mental health challenge? People are less comfortable with that phrase.
Yeah.
But scientifically, in terms of your brain, what's the difference between all these terms?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you bring up is so important. The word, when we hear mental well-being or mental health, there's still a stigma that we see that is affecting us in the workplace. It can do with generations. So we tend to see Gen X boomers by our data. I'm not pointing fingers. Still less tend to have maybe shame or hesitancy talking about mental health. It's still viewed as a weakness, the way I talked about it, I experienced personally in the workplace. But then also it can depend on gender and socioeconomic class and also racial background. So we really have to be careful there. So that's number one. But the second issue you bring up is so important. People can interchange the words stress, burnout, and mental health, and they're very different. Trust somebody when they say, I'm stressed out. Stress is a combination of what's coming at me in my external world and what I'm feeling internally. It can be emotional or mental stress or physical stress, right? You have a knee injury and that's physical stress and it can affect our mood. However, what's really important to know is burnout is now an actual diagnosis and term from the World Health Organization that specifically addresses that somebody is feeling overwhelmed and having negative emotions due to their jobs, Megan. And the symptoms of burnout are typically this feeling of overwhelm, and things in your job that used to give you pleasure are no longer giving you pleasure. You may find that employees or yourself are becoming more cynical about things, and that you no longer are celebrating something that is an accomplishment in your job. Those are the symptoms of burnout. Now, are those mental health issues? Yes. But as a doctor, I want to make clear, a mental health issue is a diagnosis that is given by a healthcare professional. It can range anything from anxiety to depression to bipolar and a whole host of other symptoms. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the mental health crisis, that 80% of people are having a symptom of either burnout, depression, anxiety, and it's built up from ongoing stress. So stress is at the root, and it's growing and expanding and creating a mental health crisis.
What should a leader look for?
Megan, I wish it was as simple. Even the doctor will tell you it's not as simple as saying, how are you feeling? And someone coming straight out and saying, I have an anxiety disorder and it's a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10 today. It's never that simple. We look at two extremes. One I call the pain in the neck employee. They've probably already been reported to seniors. They're going through the HR process of evaluation, coaching, or maybe even being let out the door. And you're like, oh, they're not a culture fit. That, as a chief wellness officer, is the person I have most compassion for and that I'm most worried about. And yet nobody may have asked the question, or they may not have felt safe or didn't have the resources to address their mental health. But then there's the other person at work. It's your high performer, your top performer. Maybe sometimes they're even overlooked. It's that person that always raises their hand or never complains to take an extra project. And all of a sudden you lay another extra to-do item on their list and they don't get it done. They seem just slightly less engaged, or they're missing details that they normally wouldn't do. Those are also the people that may be at the early version of it. So I ask you, as a leader, is there someone who you know in your company well, a colleague, that maybe is avoiding your gaze? All of a sudden they have their camera turned off on meetings when they didn't used to before. Or they're just giving you blunt answers on a text message. Fine, good, thanks. And it feels like their lights are on, but nobody is home. Those, as a chief wellness officer, are the people that I'm worried, could they be potentially having a mental health problem? Collect the data. And where do we get the data from? And remember, I keep saying this, is get comfortable with the uncomfortable data. And what I see when I'm talking to a lot of CEOs and presidents, someone in their HR division has given them the utilization rates for employee assistance program. And then they spin it in a positive way. Just last week, oh look, our company was at a 3% utilization rate. We sent out emails, we did a campaign, it's at a 6% utilization rate. And I said, well, what about the other 94% of the employees? Where are they turning to, right? So number one is get the data of not only utilization of your employee assistance program, your health insurance diagnoses, your associate surveys. And you know, Megan, we don't even have to ask an uncomfortable question like mental health. It's as simple as saying, do you believe your company cares for me? Do you believe they care about my well-being? What do your associates say? And ask it in a way that they don't have to give their name and their email address. Otherwise, there's no psychological safety in that, right? So if you collect that data, it will start to guide you. What kind of program do we need? Do we need a mental health program? Do we need something that's going to create team building and just alleviate some stress like mindfulness? What else do we need? So one is collect the data. And number two, when you get the data, ask your people, ask your team what they need. I gave an example last night where HR in a company we are consulting for is sitting at home and they thought they needed Fitbits. Yet most 90% of the company are on their feet all day long, walking 20 to 30,000 steps in the workplace, right? That program, there was not going to be a return on investment at 6, 12, or 18 months because we didn't look at the data and we didn't ask the people what they wanted. So that would be step one. And then to answer your question, once you ask the people what they want, try a short program that you can get quick feedback, not results on. Try a 14-day, 21-day program. That's about the attention span maximum we can ask of employees, and it should measure. So an example we use at Evolution Hospitality is a 21-day digital detox. We assess stress and sleep at the beginning and stress and sleep at the end. And then we ask for feedback. How can we make it better than it was? And then repeat the program again and see if we get more engagement and we get more improved results. So that's what I would say is start with a short program, assess did it work for the team and get feedback from your people, repeat it again, and then get the data.
Why do you think employees are rejecting programs? Why aren't they engaging with the app that somebody rolled out in response? It was probably a good app, but why? Yeah. What would you say is the reason they're not?
I just want every leader right now to do a self-assessment. How many emails do you log into every day? Do you log into a CRM? What other programs are you logging into the office? Now, as an employee, if you're told to log into one more thing, or your health insurance is going to be canceled and there's punishment with it, it no longer feels like wellness. And it's adding to stress and anxiety or any other underlying mental health issues, right? What you want is, I think, a great place to start for any company is to really know about your employee assistance program and get to know it. And what do I mean by that? Most companies offer it, 78% of companies in the United States, and that's wonderful. But it's also a program that is overwhelmed and is under-resourced in every state, including in Georgia here. So the first thing I would ask you as a leader, yourself, along with your HR team, if available, log into the EAP yourself. I had every one of our leaders do that and say, how easy was it for you to get through and get the help you needed? So that's number one. Number two, arm every one of your wellness ambassadors, arm every leader with easy instructions on how to find the EAP. Consistently, every company I go into, you have to go past at least one, if not multiple firewalls, dig around for a link. Now imagine, Megan, you and I are really stressed out, we're feeling vulnerable, it's going to be overwhelming to try to find that link. And we may not feel safe or secure to go to our manager or to our boss or to our leader and say, how do I log into that employee assistance program again? Because all of a sudden that fear comes up. Do I have to share the problems I'm having with you and justify it? Are you going to wonder now if something's wrong with me? There's this paranoia that is normal for everyone. So one of the best examples I've seen was done by John Hancock Manulife. Every employee, no matter who you are, has to log in on a front-facing page on a system with their username and password. Underneath that login is the access, and one button you hit for employee assistance program, another button you press if you want their mental health app, another button you want if you want their financial well-being app. It's the one-click concept that Amazon has perfected. So simple, scalable, affordable. and accessible. We can add to that. So that would be the advice. What is a brain shift? It started because there's so much health and wellness advice out there that often feels contradictory and confusing. A brain shift is a micro habit, one small action to take that feels good for you. Because nobody wants me to sit here and lecture and say, oh, girl, just eat some berries and breathe and everything's gonna be just fine, right? How many of us know, oh, the shoulda, woulda, couldas. I should be exercising more. I would eat healthier, but I travel. You know, I could stand to lose 10 more pounds. We all have the coulda, woulda, shouldas. It's not that. I typically go to the executive and then just have them slow down for a minute and sit down, get to know them. And I ask them, what do you think your brain and body needs to feel better, to feel more productive, to feel like your best self? 9 times out of 10, I get at least one answer, typically 4, and they know directly exactly what they need. Oh, I'm not hydrating enough. I've been robbing myself of sleep. So I want that for leaders, is just take a moment of pause and say, what's one micro habit? We know from our research with the Busy Brain Cure, you just do one small action for yourself, it can have a massive positive reaction for your brain and your body and your spirit. That's the power of brain shift. It's the same idea. You pick one program for your company, one brain shift, and it can create an entire culture of wellness. Most people can just do 1 or 2, and they see this massive impact on reducing stress and burnout and the symptoms of stress and burnout. Not only the mental health symptoms, but even the physical symptoms.
A power of pause. Tell me a little bit about implementing that, just a little bit about what that kind of a scalable program might look like.
Yeah. The power of pause we created was, how are we teaching our employees to take a pause at work and a pause at home? So taking a pause at work was literally me teaching others, leaders, to practice mindfulness meditation at work, to take a 3 to 5 minute meditation. And then I made recordings for them so that they could download it quickly on their phone and play it for themselves before they were getting on a conference call or before any meeting, virtual or in person, or a stand-up meeting. We would lead a pause in English and in Spanish, and now in some of our hotels, even in Chinese. It's happening. So first of all, when you look at the neuroscience of meditation and controlled breathing, we know when done correctly, for a minimum of 3 to 5 minutes, we can start to change the channel of the brain, as I tell everybody, right? There's an operation center in the brain, our amygdala, hippocampus, temporal lobe, that not only starts that famous fight or flight response we all know about, but it impacts how our emotions are perceiving a threat in the room, anxiety in the room. And so as an individual, if I start that controlled breathing, I'm now focused internally on my brain and my body, this embodiment technique that's reminding me that no matter what's going on around me, before I control the situation, I can control my mind. So that's brain science number 1. But the beauty of this that we learn from sports psychology is that when a team has any kind of ritual that is mental and physical, they're more likely to succeed at their goal, winning at the game, improving their free throw percentage rate, whatever that goal was as a team. So we thought, we're going to introduce this as a team. And what was the feedback that we got? Our leaders, our general managers, our directors of sales were telling us, you know, the meetings no longer were hijacked by that one talkative person. Or now the introvert felt more comfortable to speak up at the meeting. The meetings were shorter and everybody felt like they were heard. And we all were laughing and I got to know each other. And it was because the meeting didn't start with an agenda or one person hogging the conversation. Everybody was changing the channel of their brain to calm and focus.
You bring up a very important point that I think many CEOs are trying to manage today, and that is the call for flexibility.
Yes.
And in an effort to address the request for flexibility from employees, they are structuring it as either fully remote, hybrid, or in the workplace. Is that the answer to the question on flexibility, or is flexibility actually a different request?
When I hear flexibility as a complaint or showing up in associate opinion surveys or data we're collecting with our consulting clients, for me, flexibility, they're addressing one small portion of it, which is operational issues, right? But every company is different on ability of employees to be working remote, hybrid, or in person. When somebody says flexibility, it's telling me two things. The company doesn't care about my mental well-being or care about me. So the example that I used was someone needs to feel safe that they can have a flexible schedule, that if something else in life is creating stress, they're not going to lose their job over having to miss a day of work because they're a caregiver for elderly parents, or a child is sick, or they need to leave early to go see their therapist. There's this call for, I need you to see me and hear me and believe in me that I'm going to show up for work. But hey, I'm modeling to you, leader. I need to take care of my brain, my body, and my team. My team may be my family. And I need you to be flexible and do the same for us.
That's a really important distinction, that it's not so much about the consistency of policy around hours and where you perform the hours. It's about the nuance of listening and responding to an individual's need to meet their mental health and life balance.
Yeah. Now, I've heard this so often as a chief wellness officer at a company where someone needed to leave for family and medical reason, and they were told by a leader, by me, please do take the day off or tend to that. And then what did they say? Thank you. Thank you for honoring my boundaries, that I needed time off from work to address this important life or health issue. But what else are they doing? They're now going and telling all their other team members, my company, my leader cares for me. This is how we build a culture of wellness that's addressing mental health.
We can talk about programs. We can talk about data. But what would you say is one of the most critical factors of success for a mental wellness program at work?
No, Megan, thank you. I think I saw this from Evolution Hospitality. We wouldn't be as successful as we were today if I didn't have 150% buy-in from our president and the entire leadership team. And any initiative that we rolled out, they fully participated in and spread the word themselves. We've seen this time and time again with other companies where I consult or roll out the Brain Shift program. The teams that were successful and engaged was because the CEO and the C-suite and people saw their immediate boss or manager online or in the room in the program. It shows vulnerability, that I too am here to take care of my health, and it shows that I care, that this is important for me and the company, that I am going to participate. So in our Brain Shift protocol, we always ask leaders, what am I doing today for my brain and my body before we talk about the team? And that is critical because in the room last night, we saw 80% of leaders started to have symptoms. So it's okay to vulnerably tell your team, no, I took this test and I realized I'm probably more stressed or on a path to burnout or some of these physical symptoms. I want to do something about it. Who would like to join me? Make it a group effort. So I think that's the first thing, is leading with that vulnerability. And that's not easy to do in today's world, whether you're running a company of 60,000 employees or 6. But that's what the world calls for today. It's why we have a mental health crisis. We can no longer fake it till we make it and never let them see you sweat. That no longer works, Megan. I gave an example yesterday. We run our Brain Shift 8-week program to heal stress and burnout. And we ran it with AIG Retirement Services. And one of the most valuable lessons I learned that now I implement with other companies is when you're going to roll out a wellness program, leaders need to be involved and show up and be transparent about where they are in the wellness journey. So an example is in a room, people will take the Busy Brain test and the C-suite will get up and say, wow, I'm really surprised at how bad my score was. I have room for improvement. And now all of a sudden, everyone in the audience exhales and says, wow, if my leader is saying my score was high, I feel safe to admit too, my score was high, and we're all as a company going to do this together. That's how you build a culture of wellness, this idea that we're all in this together.
the concepts that we're talking about, the data, the statistics, it could seem overwhelming, especially to our smaller sized companies. So how would you encourage a senior executive to sort of approach this big concept?
Megan, I'm in airplanes a lot, flying around North America, and I use the analogy of sitting in an airplane. I want you to imagine that you're sitting in an airplane at the window seat, and you open the shades while you're in that ascension up to 30,000 feet, and what you can see below. And that's what I ask you to do for the company, is you have to be able to take that 30,000 foot view where you're seeing the entire organization and the needs that are happening and how mental health is impacting that. But that's often where CEOs stop, at the 30,000 foot view. When you're on an airplane, there's also somebody that's at least 3 inches from you, maybe even a little closer. And I ask you, you've got to take the 3-inch view. Many companies and organizations I go into have a hierarchy culture, just like an airplane. There's different sections, different classes. Same thing. You need to meet someone in every section of your company. And what do you do with the 3-inch view? You don't talk at them like I'm talking at you right now, Megan, or talking to our people. You pause and you listen with curiosity. You ask them their stories. People will tell you what they need for their wellness when they know that you are present and listening with compassion and caring.